Hello, everyone. I'm Homer Owens with East Kentucky Broadcasting. Once again, it's my pleasure to be talking with Donovan Blackburn, City Manager of the City of Pikeville. It's been a couple of weeks since we talked, Donovan, and the subject on everyone's mind, as you pointed out recently, is what's happening with the tourism question in general and the two tourism groups. Where one existed, now there are two.
There is, Homer, and I know we spent a considerable amount of time on it our last discussion, and hopefully I can try to answer some of the questions that you have for us today.
I have the numbers on that. It was 64 minutes, by the way.
Well, obviously it's a major issue with the community. I mean, there's the East Kentucky Expo Center's life is on the line. The quality of life of our community is a significant issue to the City Commission. As well as I know it is to the Tourism Commission, the Joint Tourism Commission, and the Fiscal Court. I think everybody has common interests. We're just not on the same page as to how to get there. I think a lot of that is just education. We've had, since our last discussion, there's been several meetings and several discussions. Some of that hopefully I can clear up today, but at least from the city's perspective, because I think it's important, the City Commission has an important role in the sense of transparency and ensuring that the public understands where it stands and what it's doing to represent the community that it was voted to do.
Is the concept of compromise entering into your discussions?
Well, compromise has been there from day one. And I think there was some recent discussions. And honestly, Homer, I'm not trying to make this anything into more than what it is. It's not about us versus them. It's not about the city tourism versus the county tourism. It's not about the city versus the county. It's about all of us. And I think, again, when I say we all have common interest, I think if you ask each party, we're all trying to get to the same point. We're just taking different paths to get there. Now, with that said, the question is has there been compromise? There's been compromise from day one. There was a recent comment made during the fiscal court meeting that the city has just now started to compromise, and that's obviously not true. If you go back and as I always say to you, Homer, as you know, that the proof is in the pudding. If you look at what is written down, if you look at what the facts are, that's what I try to stand on. I don't try to stand on speculation. Some of it is speculation because you have to forecast what the Expo Center is going to do. You have to forecast the numbers that are coming in, and that makes you come up with whatever your strategies are. But if you go back and you look at when this thing started with the tourism commissions, there was correspondence that has gone back and forth. And if you look at the original correspondence, the original correspondence says it was presented when I had my first meeting. Here's a letter, there is some verbiage in here. If you disagree with the verbiage, come back to me before that I do a final copy, and we'll discuss it.
And that letter went to?
That letter went originally to the chairman, Judy Patton, and I had a great conversation. As I've said before, Judy and I are great friends. We just got back from a trip to China together not too long ago with her and Paul, and I love her dearly. And she's got Pike County and the city of Pikeville to her dearest heart. And I understand, and that's what I think that everybody needs to understand as well before I move on to that point, is that everybody's passionate about who they're involved with and what they're serving. The Tourism Commission obviously is very passionate about tourism, as the city is. But as I've said, the City Commission is looking at things from 35,000 feet. They take care of everything from quality of life to emergency services to trash pickup to water to sewer, and all this kind of goes together. So does the county. Tourism Commission looks at the things that have evolved tourism, and they're very, very passionate about the things that they're involved with. But during our first meeting, and I don't disagree with Judy's comments that it was very quick. And as I've tried to explain to them is the reason that it was so quick is based upon circumstance. It wasn't based upon the city not pulling them into the mix originally. Understanding that when we first looked at the funding, we, again, through speculation, because we didn't have all the numbers, assumed that the numbers we were hearing in the reports in the general public about the facility being $350,000 to $400,000 short was what we were looking at. When we finally got...
That's operational funding
to keep the doors open. And that's not capitals, that's just operational funding. But then when we got past working with the legislators and then going to the East Kentucky Expo Board, because we had to tear down a lot of walls to get to the point that we are today. It wasn't just about going in and saying, okay, we're taking over the Expo Center in the sense of operations, the city was. It started back 8 months prior to that with a call from Charles Baird to the city saying the Expo Center is in serious trouble. And so it took going to Frankfurt and meeting with Greg Stumbo and meeting with David Williams. It took talking to the governor's office. It took talking to the finance cabinet to get approval to do this. Then it started working on the contract between the Expo Board and the city of Pikeville. And then we started working with SMG. Well, this SMG was several months into it. When we got into the discussion with SMG, that was when we first got the financial information that we could request in trying to build the budget. And when we got the budget, we realized the facility lost $730,000 last year. Facility is forecast to lose $685,000 this year. So it was no longer $400,000 or $450,000 as we first thought. So when the City Commission sat down and looked at a financial plan, because the necessity to keep a $10 million catalyst, an economic engine, not to mention the quality of life in the community, was very, very important to the city. So when we looked at that, that's when we started looking at other funding opportunities. And that's when the tourism piece came out and saying, look, this is a very, very important point that I don't know if it's being communicated properly by me or if it's just a missed point, but this is a regional facility. And the whole point of the restaurant tax and the bed tax, why the commission looked at that area, is because it's not just the responsibility of the city of Pikeville or the citizens of Pikeville to be burdened with the expense. This was a state facility. The state's in financial turmoil. We understand that. Nobody understands it more than we do. We talk to DLG. We talk to different agencies. We know they're in financial problems. They're doing a good job at going in and reworking their budget. I think Kentucky, the numbers that I've heard, they're coming out of some of this recession. But a state facility, and as it was first presented, it was a state facility. But it was also said that local government, local agencies would have to step up and help. And tourism was one of those agencies that the studies that were done said that would have to come forward to help.
All right, you're giving us deep background here. Can I fast forward just a little to get to a point that I'd like to hear a response from? The restaurant tax is not in any kind of controversy.
Well, yes, it is.
Oh.
It is. And
that is your daily operational money.
It is. Well, and the reason it's in compromise, and it goes back to the City Commission is now taking a wait and see approach. The reason I went through the depth, and Homer, as you know, when you deal with something, I've dealt with this now for about 8 months, and it's hard to summarize in an hour program, but I think it's important for folks to understand that as a regional facility, that the reason that we looked at this, it was allow regional dollars to come in and to pay for it. Now, your first question, let me go to that because I didn't fully answer it, and I apologize because I know I get off the track at times, did we first present or did we make any compromises? Then I'll come back to your next question if you don't mind. When we first looked at what we could do to work together with the Tourism Commission, as I've said repeatedly, that this has nothing to do with the job we feel like the Tourism Commission is doing. It has nothing to do with the relationship with the county. We work well with the county. We appreciate the county, and we are glad that the county seat is in the city of Pikeville. We agree with all of that. The problem is sustainability. One of the problems that the Expo Center's had is the inability of creating consistency. And what I mean by that is you've got promoters, and you're in this business, so you understand it very well. You go after.
They're not an easy group to deal with.
They are definitely not an easy group to deal with, but this is their bread and butter also. If they're representing, and I've said this before, is these promoters aren't representing themselves, they're representing talent. So when you've got talent that's looking to come into an area, they have to know that, because you don't plan them and say, okay, come next month. You're planning them 3-6 months down the road. They have to know you're going to be here 3 or 6 months. They're not going to schedule a date where they could be somewhere else, because once that time has elapsed, all these other venues fill up and they can't go there, so they lose. Part of the problem is that the scare of the financial stability of being in this facility hasn't been there. These promoters don't know from one day to the other if the facility is going to close. So the necessity of creating a stability, a funding package in place that would keep the doors open now and 15 or 20 years into the future was what was important. And that's why the restaurant tax and the hotel tax was addressed. But now, again, when the first letter was submitted, There was nothing in there about the city offering to pay for their their administrative desk clerk there. We came back and we offered to do that. We asked them to not to duplicate services by having a utility bill or power bill in both the Expo Center and in the train to move over to the Expo Center. They strongly did not want to do that because they felt like it was more important to be on the boulevard where they feel like the main flow of traffic is. Our counter argument is you've got 110, 120,000 people that come through this facility. It would be great exposure for tourism. But we heard them, and I went out and worked with Mr. Bailey, Frank Bailey, that owns the Hampton Inn, and we offered them a second location at absolutely no cost. Mr. Bailey's agreed to give them this 800 square foot room. It's on the first floor of the hotel where tourists come, and it would be at no charge. Lights paid.
You're talking about the Hampton?
The Hampton Inn, yes. So that was another compromise. We talked to them about, and they did bring forward at the meeting that we had with them, the work session, and the concerns about the state match money that they generate, about $60-some thousand that they spend on marketing for Pike County and City of Pikeville, and we think it's a great thing that they're doing. We agree with them. We don't want them to lose that. But since it was an issue, the compromise we made there is that it's a 90-10 mix. In other words, you've got to spend $90,000 or 90% of it. They get 10. I had it backwards. You've got to spend 100% of it. They get 90% of that back, and then all that they really paid was 10%. So our comment is you've got 200,000 in CDs. Go ahead and spend the money out of the CD. You're going to get 90% of it back, so you've not really spent it, and it will cover the other 10% that you lost. So. And that was done after the meeting that we had with them, not after the fiscal court meeting. There has been the spirit of cooperation in saying that we can keep you whole. We believe in the job and the task at hand, and we want to work with you. It has nothing to do with the city versus county.
Let me ask you, Donovan. Those things that you just mentioned were all mentioned 2 weeks ago when we met for the same program. When I'm asking now, has there been any other offers of compromise toward the solution of the problem?
Well, let me qualify the reason I went down that path is that, and the answer is nothing past our last discussion, because the comment that was made recently by the Tourism Commission is that we came to them and said this is what we want you to do, and there hasn't been any compromise until the concern with them meeting with the fiscal court came up. Now, my point is that we've been meeting with the Tourism Commission now for over a month, and over a month we've made several compromises. The problem is, in the City Commission's position is they're looking at this thing from a financial package point, Homer. One of the things that was mentioned again before and now is that at the fiscal court it was mentioned that the restaurant tax alone can support this facility, and the operationally. That it was projected that the facility will lose about $650,000. Last year it lost $730,000. This year it's going to lose $685,000, and that's with no capital improvements. You got a 7-year-old building there that's got concrete problems. It's got problems with piping in the system. There was some constructional issues. They didn't put a double door on the top level of where the banquet room is, and therefore you can't have large events up there because you've got a capacity issue because you've got a single door versus a double door. So there's money that needs to be spent in order to allow the Expo Center to continue to expand. That's beyond the $650,000 that the tourism is projecting that it's going to lose. Again, it lost $730,000. If you take our 2010 restaurant numbers and you put 1.5% onto that, we forecast that we will generate somewhere around $650,000, probably between $600,000 and $700,000. I'll say within that range. The problem is the uncertainty. We don't know what it's going to do yet. There is new restaurants that are coming to town. You got a Texas Roadhouse that's getting ready to open. The new hotel is getting ready to be built. We'll have a restaurant in it. You got Pig and a Poke that's getting ready to come. There's a new restaurant downtown and somebody that's getting ready to put another restaurant in. So there will be additional revenue that's generated. Our position is that at the end we have to create enough revenue that we know that we have at least the $700,000 worst case scenarios plus some money for capital improvements. So we're looking at around $800,000. Now, the restaurant tax may bring that in. We don't know that yet. But if it doesn't, who's going to absorb that other $200,000 in loss? The point with the commission, the Tourism Commission, is
You're speaking now of the city.
The Joint Tourism Commission.
Joint, all right.
Our position with them is in the agreement that we submitted to them early on, was to ask them to understand the significance of the Expo Center, and they agree with that. I mean, there's nobody on that commission who will say that the Expo Center is not important. But our position was to create the financial package that after the first year, we know where more certainty where the numbers are. There was a clause in the very last paragraph of that agreement we submitted that said that if there is a surplus, that the City Commission would then sit back down with the Tourism Commission and look at granting whatever surplus funds are back to the Commission, trying to make them whole again. The problem is that we don't know what those numbers are. The problem is they wanted more certain language of saying we would grant it back to them, and there was no assurance that, again, that the lighting system over there has to be replaced, and now we have a $200,000 or $300,000 additional debt. We don't know what those debts are because A, we've only had it under our belt for a couple of months. B, we don't know what kind of revenue is going to be generated out of the restaurant tax. And C, as a regional facility, which is where I first started out with this thing, is that it needed to find a funding mechanism that allowed regional dollars to come in. In other words, people traveling through our area using the restaurants and the hotel, not be putting the full burden upon the taxpayers of the city of Pikeville or Pike County, because I do agree. There was a comment made at the fiscal court meeting that Pikeville and Pike County is one. I completely agree with that.
Let's talk about the fiscal court.
Let's do.
They reacted to a presentation by Judy Patton and by Reed Potter.
They did.
Unanimously reacted, I might say, to ask Circuit Court to make a determination on the positions, the relative positions of the two commissions and the city of Pikeville. Did that stop the process in its tracks?
Well, not yet, but it has the potential to do so. And what I mean by that is that what the fiscal court voted to do was to basically ask for a judgment for a circuit judge to basically tell what rights the city has, what rights the county has, what rights the tourism has.
Is that in reaction to the League of Cities determination that you had the right to withdraw from the Joint Commission?
I think if you listen to what Roland Case said, and Roland's a good friend of mine. We work very well together. We just did his law practice is on Main Street. The Main Street program just did a facade program that really changed the look of his office. I'm on the project development board for the new judicial center, and the city attorney and Roland Case are both on there, so I get to work hand in hand with Roland. But if you listen to what Roland said is that he doesn't know. He said in the fiscal court meeting that he's looked at the law 10 different times, and he certainly sees both sides of the argument, that he doesn't know what the argument is. He argues what the KLC says, and he gives it validity under home rule. Because if you go back, what the Tourism Commission was hanging their hat on was the issue of a 1982 general attorney's opinion that said that a fiscal court cannot withdraw from a joint tourism commission.
Your position the last time we talked was he didn't go far enough and didn't read it to its conclusion.
That is correct, because under home rule, a city, unless there is legislative language forbidding a city to do so under 82A082, a city can take legislative action. There's also a law under, I think it's 82A9092 or somewhere through there, that says that if city enacts an ordinance or resolution, that they can also withdraw. So there is language that the KLC said very strongly that the city does have the authority to do so. I believe that in reading that Mr. Case understands that argument and would agree with that argument. I certainly don't want to speak for Mr. Case, but understands also that there's some confusion under what the Attorney General's opinion was. So the fiscal court's opinion was to say, time out, hold up, let's let the courts tell us what we can do and what we can't do. The problem with that is, and let me say this to you because you asked another question also, is that the motion that Magistrate Harris made was in regard to the bed tax. If you, again, I've watched the playback of the fiscal court, and the specific motion was regarding bed tax. The city's position is that if the restaurant tax isn't involved in this court case, then if we have to, we could probably operate and allow this thing to make it through the courts, because it'll take probably 18 months to 2 years to make it through the court before there's a final decision. And if that happens, then what our position will be is that we can put that bed tax into an escrow account and allow at least to know in 2 years' time, because we feel very strongly we'll win this I won't want to say win the case because
it's not entered into a legal situation,
right.
only an opinion.
It's a question of who has what rights. But we can put that money into escrow knowing that in 2 years we're going to have capital improvements and spend that money on.
So you're suggesting there then that what you're going to do if it goes that route is defer maintenance, defer renovations, defer repair, and wait for that to play itself out.
We will. I mean, there would be no other opportunity, no other option at that point, other than pulling money out of the general fund. You know, the city commission, going back to some of the argument of the fiscal court, and that is this is county money as well. This isn't just city money in tourism. You know, the city commission's position is that we're not touching the bed tax that's generated in the county, only the bed tax that's generated in the city.
Which represents about 90% of the total funds.
Well, if you look, again, there's been two different arguments by tourism. First, it was only 60% because the argument was we're going to lose the 60,000 for marketing. Now it's 80-some percent, and we don't disagree. But also understand, Homer, that we're granting back 30,000 in salaries, 20,000 in operation expenses by moving into another facility that you don't have to pay over there. So realistically, it's not that much. It's about $110,000 out of their $300,000 budget is what we would actually get, because the other would be coming back to them in-kind services and other contributions. Because understand too that 60,000 we talked about earlier, they're going to get 90% of that back, and we're going to make them whole on that too. But that's a totally different argument. But back to the fiscal court, their opinion is that this is not just city money, it's county money too. The Joint Tourism Commission does things other than just support the city, and we agree with that. Wholeheartedly agree with the fiscal court on. We're standing shoulder to shoulder on this issue. The point, though, is that the county also argues, and we agree, that they've granted since 2007 over $1 million to the Expo Center in coal severance dollars, which are regional dollars. Those aren't dollars that are coming out of the general fund of the fiscal court. The city commission, however, has granted over $500,000 out of the general fund.
But that coal severance stream is in question, isn't
it? Well, the coal severance stream's always in question.
Yeah,
whether it's going to be there goes
more
back.
So than usual.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will continue to be. And that goes back to this stability. We appreciate the fiscal court seeing the need and asking the legislators to legislate money for the Expo Center. Our position, though, is if there is a shortfall, if, in other words, if the restaurant tax is attacked, or the bed tax is attacked, and there is a shortfall, then yes, we do plan on going to the legislators. The question was why didn't the city go to the legislators? Well, understand again, Homer, we just started this 8 months ago. The legislators are in a 2-year cycle. We didn't hold a crystal ball up 2 years ago and say, we're going to take over the Expo Center in a year and a half from now, we need funding. We can't go to the legislators until this January, and that money will not be available until July. The earliest would be July. The problem is the Expo Center was $600,000 in debt. It has operational expenses today. So a lot of the discussion has been, you should have, or why don't you think about doing this? Our counter argument is but understand there's a need today. We've got to fill those voids today, not tomorrow. We understand that tourism is an important part, and we want to work with the County Tourism Commission. There's some things we'll talk about here in a minute of things that we are working outside of just the city of Pikeville on initiatives. But we also understand that that by working together on these initiatives, that it will generate an economy, it will generate additional tax base, but we all have to share in that. So what the city said is that what better way to share than to use the regional tax, because it does represent both the county and the city. The restaurant tax represents the people that travel, which are people that are eating here from the county and the city. We agree with that. If there's a shortfall, though, if you pull some of those dollars away, then the only people that can make up for those shortfalls would be the county and the city. So the fear is that in the fiscal court taking action, if it ties the dollars up if the facility stays open, then the city and county will have to come together to share before there's any coal severance available, to share what the shortfall is going to be. So the restaurant tax and the hotel tax jointly would do that without having to rely upon the city's general fund and the county's general fund to come up with what shortfall there is. So now the fear is, and I will agree that we have not had any conversation with the fiscal court. I did speak to the judge early on, not about anything in particular. The judge and I had a conversation Monday. Judge Rutherford's a great friend. We have a great working relationship together. We've got an open dialogue. Very little, he sits on several city boards. I sit on a couple of county boards, and then there's some joint boards that we sit on together. We just had a meeting this past Monday that the judge is on the Marion's Branch Development board. So, we work very well together.
He's dealing with his set of problems financially because they're experiencing a $3 million shortfall.
They are, and this has, and I guess that's my point, is that this has impact upon the county as well as the city. And I appreciate, comments like that Magistrate Jeff Anderson made. And, Jeff again is the city.
He offered his services.
He did. Jeff's the district or the magistrate for District 1, which is the city of Pikeville. Jeff complimented the city, saying the city does a great job, the county does a great job, and that he was open for discussions. And I appreciate that. Jeff's a good guy, a good friend. We sit side by side on the project development board, and I appreciate him taking that position, because as I told the judge on Monday that. The judge's comments to me and I agree with him wholeheartedly, that he's had a major undertaking. They got, like I just said, a $3 million budget shortfall. They're working on a lot of things to make sure they don't hurt the services of the county. His position with me is that he's had his focus on taking care of the big picture of the county's budget, and he's been really invested in that. And that he pledges that over the next week or two he's going to dive into a lot of these facts and numbers that I have shared with him.
On that subject.
On the subject
tourism.
Of tourism and why the city feels like, and the KLC says that we can do what we've done, why financially it's the right position to take. Look, when we first started talking about the Expo Center, I went over and met with the judge. This was part of his ideal. And I said, Judge, I know that facility, the county has been riddled with a lot of disaster events, and I know that this facility is important to you in the county in matters of emergency declarations, of having a place to where we can bed people if there's a disaster, or having a distribution point. So the city doesn't want to take that away. As part of our deal, we want to offer that to the county, that if ever there's an emergency disaster declared, even though the city is in charge of the operation of the facility, that we would offer that back to the county. The recent Cafe on Main, some work's going in the plaza right now.
I want to talk about that in a minute.
We said we want press conferences, things like that. It's right there beside the courthouse. We're one. We agree with all of that. The concern, I guess, or the aggravation or frustration, if you want to say it, is when the fiscal court did come to me, or a rolling case did come to me over a month ago and say this is being debated. The fiscal, I'm going to pursue, the Tourism Commission's come to us, and I may make a recommendation that the fiscal court look at filing this action. And I pled at that time not to, and I explained our point, but said certainly we're up for discussion. Well, when you've got the Tourism Commission, and again, who's passionate about it, goes before the fiscal court and talks about all these issues, and you hear one-sided, and you take action that could and will close the facility if that restaurant tax is touched, then that's hurting the county, that's hurting the city. You can argue, and I don't disagree, that all these things are important. That we mentioned on our last conversation, all the events that happen in Elkhorn City, in the county, Publix was mentioned. The city tourism, Jesse Bowling has partnered with Publix, which is the county the
Johns Creek Golf Course.
We partner with them with Muscle on Main, and we've handed over at every event. We're offering specials Monday through Thursday to go play at Publix. So we're promoting Publix. We're promoting Raven Rock. This isn't about just the city of Pikeville. We realize there's other events that goes around, but we also realize that the experts have said that a facility that has a direct impact of $10 million, that doesn't count the residual business that it creates. A direct impact of over $10 million has the potential of closing. That's what we were trying to stop from happening. And it had nothing to do about throwing rocks at those events in the county, because when I go back to say what tourism does for those events is promote them. We came back and said, spend your $60,000 and we'll make it whole with the other $6,000 to keep their brochures out there, to keep their ability of allowing their director to travel to promote these events. You know, the county bed tax generates over about $60,000. That's more than enough to pay for the director because we were paying for their administrative personnel, Ms. Goff. So, you know, the plan that we had in place was to ensure that those county events were promoted. And so we agree with all that. So I haven't been contacted yet, but I'm looking forward, you know, and I know probably your next question by tourism. The last conversation that I had, to put it in timeline for you, Homer, is that our last conversation was 2 weeks ago this Wednesday.
Yes.
I met with Mr. Potter on Thursday, who's the vice chair. I went on vacation on Friday. I was gone the entire last week. I came back on Monday. We had a city commission meeting Monday, of which I talked to the county for the first time on Monday, Judge Rutherford. And then today is Wednesday. So, you know, I've not been in town for over a week. So in fairness, I've not had the opportunity. I did talk to the county, and the judge has given me assurance that he's going to look at it open-eyed. I'm hoping that in my conversation with Mr. Potter, who's again, I've said this before, Reed and I are good friends, and that's how we started the conversation out this past week when we met, is that this isn't Donovan and Reed talking, this is the vice chair and the city manager talking, and both of us have interest at heart, and we want to come together. So the last letter that I presented to the Tourism Commission is that this is what we feel like our final offer, because we don't, you know, if we go below this and there's not funding to take care of the first year, but if we understand after the first year there is additional revenue, then we're more than welcome or happy to sit back down.
Did the Joint Commission offer you any compromise?
Yes.
All right. Are you considering it?
I won't. It wasn't in depth enough, and it has the potential of hurting the Expo Center.
Let me ask you another question. Pikeville City Commission, are they on board with you and your efforts? And I'll be surprised if you say no.
Well, 100%, and that's a very good point, Homer. I'm glad you asked me that, because understand what my position is. I'm the voice of the City Commission. My job is the doer. Their jobs are the thinker, as the mayor has put it. Their job is to consider the facts, make the determination. My job is to go out and to make it happen. So everything that I'm saying has been discussed with the commission, and this is their will. This isn't Donovan Blackburn's will. This is the will of the elected officials that was voted in by the public to preserve their quality of life and ensure that their best interest is taken to heart. They represent the city, but they also represent the county. And somebody said, well, what do you mean by that? Is because I agree with what the fiscal court said. You know, people that come to, the city is 6,900 in population, but it's a service area of 240,000. You know, people that work in Pike County come to the city for services. You know, they depend upon our fire and our ambulance service, our road systems, our trash service, at the places that they do business. So the city does represent the county. The county represents the city as well. We've got a magistrate that sits on the fiscal court. So it is one community. The Expo Center is a regional facility that supports not just the city of Pikeville, it supports the county. And I know the county does not, it was stated during the fiscal court meeting, they don't want to see this facility closed. Well, the problem is how are you going to keep it open if you don't have a revenue stream? It can't stay open. The mechanism that's in place, certainly if the county wants to absorb the $150,000 that the shortfall that would be there through the Tourism Commission, we're more than happy to allow them to do that. What we're saying is let's work together so we don't have to pull out of the general fund of either entity. The City Commission did stand up, and whatever criticism, there's been a lot of pats on the back of the commission of taking a stance of passing the restaurant tax. There has been some criticism, but again, you have to understand, we talked about this during our last meeting, is that it's a regional tax. It's only 1.5%. These are taxes that are going to be paid by everybody that comes through the area. The population of the service area is 240,000. There's only 60-some thousand, 63, 64,000 live in Pike County. This tax is being paid by the 240,000, not the 6,900 or 6,300. So instead of having to pay a 10% restaurant tax, you only have to pay 1.5%, 15 cents on a $10 meal to ensure that facility stays open. But that tax isn't in Elkhorn. It's not in Coal Run. It's not in the county. It's in the city of Pikeville. And that's the fairness of what the commission's saying is let's be fair. If the other communities aren't able to participate or not participating, then just don't put that burden upon the city of Pikeville. Let's be fair in keeping a regional facility open, a regional facility.
Okay, when you talk about the restaurant tax, this is newly enacted legislation or regulation, whatever city commission has as their edict, that will go into effect July 15th.
Yes, it is.
How did it get combined with the bed tax in the discussion?
Well, again, a great question. Originally, when we stepped back and said, okay, here's some things we can look at doing. We can look at, the Representative Combs and Hall and Senator Ray Jones went down and fought for legislation. I think, again, Representative Combs did a great job presenting it to legislators and asking for a rebate in sales tax. So there was some revenue that's going to come back to the facility. We looked at, again, thinking that there was going to be a $300,000 or $400,000 deficit. We said, okay, one of the things we can do is do the same thing we did with our other company that we deal with, which is UMG, and that is put SMG under the city's purchase order program. By doing that, they don't have to pay sales tax, so that'll generate another $30,000 or $40,000 back to the facility. We looked at naming rights, we looked at gas rights, some things that we could do to try to cut those expenses. So the beginning of this discussion is if we relied upon coal severance, if we relied upon the $100,000 that the city was granting to the facility each year, that we probably could create enough to keep the doors open by creating more events with it and lowering that debt down to $200,000 or $300,000. It's because we did the same thing everybody else did. We read the literature, we read the studies, we read the numbers that we were hearing. Reality hit us when we got the actual numbers of what the facility was actually losing, $730,000 last
So
year.
you saw the need for more revenue.
There was a need.
Restaurant tax.
That's absolutely right. And then we said, okay, the restaurant tax is in place because the intent was only to place 1% tax in. We agreed to raise it up to 1.5% because we still said we don't think there's going to be enough, because the other part of this is to make the facility affordable. One of the things that's been debated in our community is that we can't afford, for Pikeville Medical Center that hosts their ball in there to come in and spend, $200,000, whatever they spend, I don't know the number, but an absorbent amount of money. We need to make these prices affordable because it's a community facility. So, but if we have more frequency, we should generate enough dollars that one will offset the other. But again, there's too many unknowns in there about what may happen, what could happen, and all we're looking at is what I won't say the worst case scenario is, because the $730,000 didn't include the capitals. So when we sat down and said, okay, look, there's more of a need because it lost $730,000, and it's expected to do this. Understand that, Homer, is that across the nation, all these venues,
not self-sustaining.
It does. There's venues out there that's losing $2 million. It depends upon how the community sees it and how they want to represent it. But there's these facilities all over the state of Kentucky and all over the nation are having the same issues. But with that said, another point. I don't want to get off track, because another issue you asked me about was the restaurant tax and how did it and how it's impacted by this. And I'm going to go to I did receive a letter, and all these letters are subject to open records, and again, through transparency, anything the city's written is out there available, and we've supplied those to the press when they've asked for them. But and it's not a debate or a feud or a war. It's a matter of determination. It's a matter of understanding. It's a matter of communicating. But the commission received a letter on Monday, right before the commission meeting, and the Tourism Commission, the Joint Tourism Commission, or the County Tourism Commission, however you want to put it, outlaid all the wonderful things that they do for the community. And again, we don't disagree with that. But what the end request is that we work together, that the City Commission agree not to touch the bed tax, and they won't agree to question the restaurant tax. Now,
this represents compromise, which we talked about earlier.
But understand, the fiscal court's motion wasn't to do with the restaurant tax. So what the Joint Tourism Commission's doing is they're asking for a compromise, which is what they've asked for all along, is don't touch any of our money. The problem is that there's not enough funding there to keep the doors open, and a question that I keep asking is who's going to pick up the slack if there is an additional shortfall? So Now, with that said, we're willing to sit down. I'm willing to sit down with the county. I'm willing to sit down with tourism. We'll continue discussions because this was the first time. If you look at, and anybody can look it up, under KRS 91A 400, I challenge anybody to look it up. It says that if a city, first of all, only a Class 4 city can implement a restaurant tax, which we are. If a city or if a restaurant tax is implemented, then that tax goes to the Tourism Commission created in that city. The verbiage is very clear. I believe
Keyword city.
In that city, keyword. So the commission agreed to pass the restaurant tax, understanding that the City Tourism Commission, which was created, would grant the tax back to the city so that it would have it to support the Expo Center. The shortfall in the capitals and the other dollars that are needed are what we're asking the Tourism Commission to help contribute for. Now again, if there's another way to skin that cat, if the county or Tourism Commission or these other cities want to come forward and help with that shortfall to keep the tourism dollars completely whole, then we're more than open to talk about that.
Are you ready to respond to the information you got on Monday, the letter?
Yeah, my intent is to once again is to reach out and to talk to either Judy or Reed. Again, not just because of the position I'm in, and I represent, the city and the commission, but as friends. I mean, again, there's no debate that both Judy and Reed love their community.
Fiscal coordination, has that stopped everything dead in its tracks?
It hasn't stopped it, but it has hampered it. There is now an uncertainty, and again, the city commission has taken a kind of a wait-and-see approach. If the action is filed against the hotel tax and asking what rights that each agency has, then again, the commission is willing to kind of step back and say, we'll put this money over into an escrow account. We'll wait for it to be resolved, and if we have to give that money back to the commission, we'll do that. But we have no capital improvements along the way, so now we're going to have to go to legislators or somebody else to find out where that shortfall is going to be made up from. But if the challenge comes up in questioning the restaurant tax as well, then understand what happens. If the restaurant tax is challenged, this thing stays in court for 2 years. There's a possibility, though I think it's a slight possibility, but there's a possibility that the courts say, okay, the city, no, you don't have the right to do this. And now you've got to pay $2 million back. The city can't put the taxpayers of Pikeville in that position. So the city would have no choice.
That's if you get a negative determination.
Well, no, it's not just a negative determination. It's a matter of whether or not it goes to court, Homer, because, again, understand, there's a need today, and that's what we're trying to get everybody to understand is today is the need. Today is the Expo Center still has a deficit. There's still, out of the $600,000 that was short, there's still $250,000 that's not been paid. It still has operational needs. It still has capital needs today. Coal severance won't be available for another year. The county's in budget turmoil. The state's in budget turmoil. The city last year ate into our deficit, or not deficit, but into our reserve for the first time. So,
of the three entities, the city is in by far the best financial condition.
It is, but I go back to, it's a regional facility. It's not, the city of Pikeville is not the only agency that benefits from this. Whitesburg, Prestonsburg, Paintsville, all the surrounding communities benefit by the Expo Center.
You wouldn't be so bold as to ask them for financial help, would you?
Well, the county judge actually has already. The county judge made a statement early on that before the city entered into this, that this is a regional facility and that other communities need to step up to help out. They're in budget. I just spoke to the judge executive of Knott County yesterday, and he's looking at a way.
Randy?
Yeah, Randy, a good friend of both of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Randy's looking at a way to make up a budget shortfall. He told me they had a budget shortfall, and it's because of revenue being down from monies they received from Frankfurt from gas royalties or from the gas rights severance. And they had a 1.2 million shortfall, and they've done some cutbacks, and so that he doesn't have to cut services, he's got about 400,000 he's trying to make up. So this is problems that's not just to Eastern Kentucky, it's throughout the whole nation. Other communities are looking at ways to create revenue streams, but you have to understand what this thing does. Because the restaurant tax, they say, well, that's another tax on the people. Well, yes, it is, but look at what it does. It creates $10 million worth of injection, economic opportunity back into the facility, which comes back to the community. It creates people, those 180,000 people from the Expo Center that came a couple of years ago, that 1 year, ate in the restaurants and stopped for gas and shopped at sort of, so that created additional jobs. So it's keeping the facility open allows Pikeville College to grow because they've got the national champions basketball team in the facility, and getting ready to move the girls team over to the facility. It's the arena football program that took local kids that now they can grow from Pikeville College football into a career opportunity here with arena football, but it brings people from other parts of the area, the region, here to eat and shop. So it's a small tax that creates more jobs, better quality of life, better opportunities for places like the hospital, the college, and I could go on and on. But and nobody disagree. I would say is that again, the tourism doesn't disagree with me on that point. The county doesn't disagree with me on that point. But we're just trying to be financially responsible.
As I talk to you, I want to interrupt you just for a second, Donna. It seems that one of your main concerns now is that the restaurant tax comes into question, gets drawn into the debate about the bed tax.
Yep.
And you see that as really threatening the daily operation of the Expo Center.
If it goes to court, it will close the facility because there's no other way to finance it. And the city commission cannot put the taxpayers of Pikeville at risk. Because again, understand that in 2 years from now, if this thing goes to court for 2 years, let's say the restaurant tax generates $600,000 over the next 2 years. That's $1.2 million. If the courts say no, that tax cannot be applied to the Expo Center, it has to go to tourism, then we've got to pay that money back to the Tourism Commission. The city out of the general fund. There's no other tax base to pay it from. I don't believe that will ever happen. I believe the courts will award and say based on KRS 91A-400, but the possibility is there. The courts through interpretation could say, well, yes, it is. And the city commission cannot put the citizens of Pikeville in that risk when it's, again, the key issue is it's a regional facility.
If I read it right, your position stands on an opinion from the League of Cities?
Well, it stands upon one, Homer, I've been doing this now for 7 years. I read the KRSs. I have a city attorney that does a great job, Russell Davis, and I've read a lot of laws. I've written a lot of agreements. This position I've become an engineer, an attorney. You serve a lot of hats. But this is probably the clearest law to me of anything that I've read. Because again, under 91A, I think it's 91A 400, or 500. It says that a city of a second through a sixth class can create a tourism, either by joint action, tourism commission, either by joint action or individually, separately. But it says plural, tourism commissions, plural. So the legislative authority says that a city can set up more than one commission. The legislative authority says that the existing tourism commission has the right to enter into contracts. It says that they have the right to spend their bed tax for convention business, for operational business. So the KRS is very clear in saying they have the right to do everything we've asked them to do. Their position, I don't think, is saying no, we don't have the right to do it. They're saying that if we do that, then we diminish the ability of the Tourism Commission to perform through the method that we want to perform. The original resolution that was adopted by the City Commission in the 80s also states that the Tourism Commission is to promote not just tourism but convention business, which is the Expo Center. There's a lot of debate in what and how those dollars need to be spent now. We're saying that it's not a debate because if the Expo Center isn't able to move forward, then you diminish your second. Mr. Bailey will tell you that his second hotel, there's a question of whether he can build it now. There's a question of filling the rooms that are in the existing hotels, which will diminish those bed tax anyway. So we're just saying protect the main catalyst, and then we'll work out the other stuff as we go forward, because I believe that we will build, but it's going to take some time to do that.
What's the next step?
Well, I think the next step is a wait and see. Is to continue
time is not working for you, though.
Well, it's not. The time there's a concern with the time frame because there's a need today to keep the doors open. There's a need today for funding. If a action is filed against the restaurant tax or a question on the restaurant tax, and this is basically what the Tourism Commission is saying is that if you touch our bed tax, then we're going to question the restaurant tax. Is the way that I read it. May not be what they meant, but that was what the interpretation the commission has. But if it ties up the tourism tax or the restaurant tax in court, of which a tax that the city commission passed, then the commission will have no other intent or no other option but to pull back and just let the fiscal court action play itself out and shut the doors until that it's done.
We had the greatest intentions of not spending the entire hour on this subject.
And I apologize. I know it's a big issue, Homer. It is a big issue.
Well, no apology needed. You're dealing with it every day, so I appreciate what you're doing. We're going to do this again. This is only number 2 in program number 3. I bet we talk about it again. What do you think?
Well, hopefully we'll have some resolve to it. Hopefully we can all come together and come up with a plan of action. But I think the Expo Center is going to be here for a long time. Whether it's open or closed, it's still going to be an icon in the community. And we've got to, in our opinion, we got to work towards making sure that the doors stay open. And I hopefully we can get there, and I believe we can. I think, again, everybody has the best interest at heart.
Joint Tourism Commission, Pikeville City Commission, bed tax, restaurant tax. The Expo Center is under threat. I'd say the ship is at anchor at the moment and making no progress toward resolution, except maybe in the back of your mind, you know something that we don't, which would be appropriate.
Well, what I do know is that we've got hardworking men and women out there that serve our community, that have the best interests of the community at mind. They want our community to succeed, and that's, I know we're getting close to being out of time here, but that's some of the things that I would like to address. And I know you may have some other questions also, Homer, but
I'll defer.
The thing is that we are one community. I agree with that. We've got people that care about the community. We're all very civil with each other. It's not, we're not name callers or pointing fingers at each other. It's saying we have a difference of opinions. That's what we're either appointed or elected to finish. But overall, everybody's trying to serve the community. With that said, serving the community, the Chamber of Commerce is regional chamber now, is getting ready to release their yearly publication. And the city of Pikeville is a feature story about all of the events that's going on in the city this year. So we're glad and proud of all the accomplishments that we've been able to make. And it's not, again, this hasn't just been the city. The city commission's had the vision, but this is, as I put it, a perfect storm. It's working with Paul Patton with the college, Walter May at the hospital, East Kentucky Broadcasting, or some things I'm working with Keith Casebold on right now. It's working with Judge Rutherford, but there's the Kentucky League of City also has a citywide magazine that they had a Cityscape, they called it, but they've done away with that magazine. There's a new city magazine that comes out to every city, along with many other organizations throughout the state of Kentucky. We are going to be the first city that is featured on the front page, along with a feature article that will come out in August.
That magazine again, what was it?
It's Cityscape. It's a city, or New City is the name of the magazine through the Kentucky League of Cities. But they came here last month and did a feature story, or wrote the story and took some pictures of the community. But the state of Kentucky is recognizing what Pikeville is doing through the great leadership of Mayor Justice and the rest of the city commission. But the other point of is tourism, and talking about the city has a tourism commission. And sometimes we don't educate the public enough, and that's a fault that we have, of all the things that are going on, because there is so much going on. And when you look at the things that are happening in the city, and not just from infrastructure and development. I mean, we've got a lot of things going on. That we're, like I said, we're working across lines. I mentioned with the fiscal court, we got the judicial center going on. We got with the University of Pikeville, the medical school that's going on. You got Pikeville Medical Center with $100 million development going on. You've got Texas Roadhouse going on with 3 new restaurants. You've got a new hotel that's getting ready to start construction in August, which is the Hilton Gardens. You've got the city's working again jointly with the county on Marion's Branch. We've got a Something we haven't talked about, and I know we try to get there, behind Walmart, there's some movement going down there with not only Texas Roadhouse, but I've been working with the developer now for the past year that I'm hoping I'm getting very, very close. We actually have an agreement with them of creating a 300,000 square foot new retail development with some national chain names. And I can't, unfortunately, I've signed a confidentiality agreement. I can't talk about who all is in the mix right now.
That parcel of land between Walmart and the post office?
Yes.
Roughly.
And we're actually working with the post office of including them in part of this development. I made a trip to Greensboro, North Carolina a couple of weeks ago and met with the post office, and I'm working with Hal Rogers' office right now on helping with this development. We just spent $1 million building some additional infrastructure there on the site to allow that development to take place. But it's going to be a major addition to our community. And again, I think we've already got a contract on the site for the sale of the property. We're just trying to work out some final details because the contractor has 180 days to.
Let's soften up the end of this program, Donovan. 4th of July coming up. City Park will be utilized fully. You'll see a lot of traffic around your office, I'm sure.
Well, we do, and that's a good point. Well, I can go into the end of this with things going on in July. It's not just about the 4th of July. July 1st, we do Muscle on Main, but you've got the Good Old Boys Car Club that will now be hosting their events here in the city. They're starting with Long John Silver's on South Mail Trail at 6 o'clock. The meeting there will be every Friday night through different restaurants in the city. 4th of July celebration starts at 6 o'clock. We've got games, activities, inflatables, fireworks at dark 30, I say. At July the 8th, we got a block party with Muscle on Main at Mr. Gaddy's from 6 to 10. July the 9th is the Muscle on Main Cruise-In and Burnout event. Starts at 3 o'clock with burnout and music and all the things going on downtown. July the 10th through the 15th, KEMI, the Mine Safety Training Competition, they've got their annual event at Bob Amos that we work with them on. I just spoke with a good friend of mine there, and they've got, I think he said a little over 50 competitors, groups that will be competing there. They come from all over the area to
Donovan,
compete.
you make Pikeville sound like a vibrant, alive city.
Well, it's things are coming to life, Homer, and we hired a event coordinator about 5 years ago with this being the vision of Pikeville. You look at the city park, we invested $2 million there. Between now and the end of the year, there's 160 events scheduled in the city park. We spent $2 million with the community center, the gazebo, the shelter there. There's 160 events scheduled in the city park this year. July 16th in the park, we've got Kids Day in the park with the Hillbilly Christmas in July. On the 16th to 17th is the Hillbilly Christmas in July, and of course with the Randy Jones Memorial Ride. But we'll also be showcasing the new playground that the city, and again, this is another
Special
event,
needs.
the Special Needs Playground, where the city has contributed money. Jeff Anderson with the county presented a check from the county. We've worked together on, again, a great special needs. And I've been involved with the Hillbilly Christmas Ride organization from their inception. So it's a great event. On July 20th, we've got the KLC. They'll be here for a zoning conference. And then July 30th, we work with them on the July Jam.
Okay, Donovan, I'm going to have to stop you. Or you talk right on, and I'll close the program, and you can continue. Go right on.
Well, again, I realize the intent in speaking with the Pike TV, which is something else that we've launched. We try to keep this stuff to a minimum, but we've had so much going on, Homer, in the community, and I didn't touch on all the marketing, all the other pieces. Pike TV is playing a pivotal point in this. It allows us to open up and talk to the public,
Yes.
but it also allows the public to know all the stuff that their elected officials are doing. So we appreciate the opportunity. As always, as I've said, you do a wonderful job. We appreciate each
Thank you, Donovan. Donovan Blackburn, City Manager of the City of Pikeville. I'm Homer Owens for East Kentucky Broadcasting, and join us again soon. We haven't exhausted that subject of the taxes.